Hi everyone, it's Pocket. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, thank you so much for tuning in. Usually I make videos about collecting and customizing ball-jointed dolls. It's quite a niche hobby, that's why lots of us like to connect online and share our thoughts and our collections. It's a very creative hobby with many different elements to it. It's also a very challenging hobby and quite often very expensive hobby because it has so many different dimensions to it. And today I'm going to be talking about my personal BJD journey. This year has been my 5-year dolly anniversary, if you will, and lots has happened, lots has changed. My collection is completely different from where I envisioned it would be in the beginning, and that's why I always think it's very interesting when people share like their history in the doll hobby or just their stories. I think I'll split this into a 2-part series. This first video will be talking about 5 lessons that I learned in 5 years in the BJD hobby. So it's about things that I learned in the BJD hobby, things that helped forge my understanding of it and shape my journey and basically allow me to be at the place where I am now. And the second part of this series, or this mini-series if you will, this duology, will be about my current collection. I currently own 7 completed BJDs, which is so exciting. And in that video I'll be going more in depth, showing you each and every one of them and kind of just giving you a brief overview of the collection. Also talking a bit about where I want to go next with my collection. Let's jump right into it. The first lesson that I learned very, very quickly in this hobby is that there will never, or almost never in most cases, be only one doll. In the beginning I just had finished school. It was 2013, and I was just getting into, going to university, and I didn't have a lot of income. So when I discovered the BJD hobby and I knew I wanted to be a part of it, I was kind of stressed with the idea of, oh god, I've got to settle for one doll and this has got to be it, which is, of course, looking back now, it's insane. It's very, very rare to come across someone who still owns their first doll, or in general just to find someone who really hit that nail on the head with their first doll and was able to make something of it straight away. I mean, the process of completing a doll alone is quite tedious because you've got to get them wig, you've got to get them eyes, you've got to get them a set of clothing, shoes, and then maybe you don't want them to always wear the same outfit, so you've got to get more clothing, and all of these things, depending on where you live, take a long time to ship. Especially the doll itself takes a very, very long time to make and process, and especially in the beginning that can be quite daunting because you feel like you have to get it right. You don't want to waste like 3 to 4 months, maybe even longer, waiting on a doll which you're not so sure on 100%. Yeah, so this was basically me back then too. But the doll that I ended up buying was a Doll's Own Tulip, and this was right before they discontinued the old 60cm line dolls, the female ones. And I was really, really happy with her from the company pictures, because how else are you going to judge if you like a doll or not? You look at the company pictures and you kind of figure it out along the way. You kind of try and imagine what you would do with it. And to be honest, back then I didn't have much of an idea of what I wanted the doll to become, and I think that's the first error I made when purchasing the doll. I just looked at the company pictures and went from there. Of course, there's nothing wrong with just buying the doll as is, but I wasn't just buying the full set, I was only buying the basic doll. So my doll that I was gonna get, or that was to become my first doll, was not gonna look anything like the company's pictures. Do you see the fatal error I made there in my thinking? I knew from the very beginning that I was going to be a customizer in this hobby. I was going to make these dolls look to be whatever really I wanted. And that was also one of the reasons I really wanted to partake in the hobby, because I thought that was so cool. Of course, the time that it would take me to actually finish a doll that I was happy with would involve learning lots of new skills and take a very long time and take lots of hours and effort and sometimes a lot of frustration, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So I got my Doll's Own Tulip and ordered, and while I was waiting for her, she took like 3 to 4 months, regular processing time for a BJD. I discovered Den of Angels and I found another doll on the marketplace that I really, really wanted. The doll that I saw was an House Arvid. In the beginning, I really, really liked the realistic looking dolls, and I thought it was so cool that they could create this illusion in photography where you would be kind of biased and you would be caught off guard thinking that this is a real person, but it's actually a doll. I really was into that. So I liked Eiffel House dolls naturally because they have this very realistic sculpting. So I bought the Eiffel House Arvid. So the Eiffel House Arvid actually arrived before my Dolls and Tulip did, which was really overwhelming because suddenly I had this huge hunk of resin man. He came unstrung as well to top it off. I think only then did I really realise the scope and the different dimensions of effort it was going to take to really make this into a completed doll. Also in the beginning I was very confident that I would sew all my clothes by hand, I would do my own face-ups, wigs, whatnot, I would do the whole package. Yeah, oh my gosh, I had a lot on my plate. So fast forward a bit, I got an Eiffel House Karina next, which was my third doll, and I really loved their aesthetic, but I started to realise that the posing was pissing me off. The handling was just really frustrating. I couldn't get them to look the way I wanted them to look in pictures. It was just very frustrating, and I just felt like I was being inhibited by the doll's limited mobility. So what happened then was in November of 2013, I think it was November, I found a local BJD hobbyist that was selling her Feeple 65 Chloe. And when I got my Feeple 65 Chloe, everything changed. I know many of you own Fairyland dolls, and they are well known for their very, very good posing and just their excellent jointing system, because all their mechanisms and everything, the way that they are constructed is just very well thought through. Whereas with Eiffel House dolls, for example, I mean, I've made a whole video on this, but Eiffel House dolls, for example, are sculpted according to aesthetically pleasing norms or lines. So getting my Feeple 65 Chloe completely changed my perspective on the hobby. I was all for the Fairyland dolls. Suddenly I was all for posing. And that brings me to the second lesson that I learned, and that is that handling is equally as important as aesthetics. Aesthetics are subjective. What you find aesthetically pleasing or what you find to be beautiful is absolutely your point of view and your subjective experience of beauty. So that doesn't matter if the doll looks realistic or not, you can still find it beautiful. And that's why for me that kind of shift took place, that yeah, I don't need to have a completely photorealistic doll. I just want a doll that handles well and that feels good, and that when I put it in a certain position that it will hold it for a while, that I can take a nice picture. This was like the first year in the hobby that was very formative for what would come in the future, because 2014 I bought the most dolls that I ever bought at once. I really invested a lot of money. Also, I sold both Eiffel House dolls. I kept the Tulip or the Meggie Doll Zone, my first doll, for a little while, and right up until I think the beginning of last year, and then I sold that one too. So all three dolls I owned prior to my Feeple 65 Chloe ended up being sold. And that's why I went into such big detail describing the first year in the hobby, because I think for each of us, the way we start something or the way we get into something is very, very formative. It's like with early life, you know, the early childhood memories, they just stay with you and they make you into the person that you are today. And it's no different when you're experiencing something like the BJD hobby or any skill, I'd argue. It's just very important how you get into it. The third lesson that I learned from the BJD hobby is if you can't complete it, it's probably not meant to be. That really goes for the dolls that I bought after Feeple 65 Chloe, which was my Soul doll Azrael, limited edition Azrael, and my Feeple 65 Roke. Now these are two dolls. The Azrael, I didn't even get a face-up. He never got a face-up from me. It just didn't work out. I didn't find the time. And the Roke was such a pain in the butt, because I waited 9 months for that doll, Feeple 65 Roke, and it was so painful because I just couldn't get him to be what I wanted him to be. I tried numerous times and I was just always so uninspired, and every time I'd open up my doll cabinet or see my dolls together, he'd be the one that would be naked and just look so just so unfinished, and I hated that feeling. I guess it's a bit like that one saying that goes, relationships are like farts. If you have to force it, it's probably, well, you know what I mean. But it was the same kind of feeling. I'm trying to get this out of this doll and it's just not meant to happen. Even though it's a Fairyland doll, even though the posing is really, really good for such a big doll and I really like it and went through so much effort to get it, in the end, if it's not meant to be, it's not meant to be. So you gotta let it go and move on. Numerous dolls were bought and sold during this time. I really enjoyed people's 60s as well as people's 65s, and I was also really drawn to some singular dolls. I got a soul doll, Devonia, also minifees. I got into minifees. I got a minifee Sion and a minifee Karsh, both of which I enjoyed massively. I still have the minifee Sions. Actually, I have two minifee Sions now. I got into Dolce dolls, which I'm extremely happy with. I was still very much evolving in the hobby. I definitely wasn't settled yet. I suddenly had all these characters I wanted to shell, but all the while I still had dolls that were not complete, like the Feeble 65 Rogue, and also dolls that were taking a long time to finish just because, you know, life gets in the way and you're busy, you don't have that much time to invest as maybe you do in the beginning, or the enthusiasm is not always there. Also frustrated with the different things I was trying to learn to be able to do for my dolls. Which brings me to the fourth lesson that I learned. DIY is worth it, but it's bloody hard. If you're going to be a customizer in this hobby, be it face-ups, clothes, accessories, wigs, whatever, buckle up because it's going to be a hell of a ride. Especially if you don't know anything in that specific field yet, if you haven't developed any skills yet. People who are professional seamstresses might find it easier because they already know the foundation, they know the skills that they need to make doll clothing. Likewise, people who paint models or miniatures might find it easier to work on a three-dimensional piece, or people who do art in general might find it easier to execute these techniques or to use colors, or already will have supplies that they might need for face-ups. The most struggles I had was probably with face-ups. I knew I really wanted to do face-ups. It was just a thing. I was driven by it. A big milestone for me was opening my face-up shop and actually being able to accept commissions. I just was able to garner so much more knowledge about different dolls and different aesthetics and how they feel and what different tan skin tones look like. Then sewing. I was lucky enough to already know a bit of sewing. My mother sews a lot, so she was able to teach me. I also had to take a mandatory sewing course at uni because I studied home economics. So that all kind of tied in very, very well. And now I feel like I'm at the point where I could actually make something, or I already have made things and I'm happy with it. If you should take away one thing from this video, then let it be the last lesson, which is the fifth lesson that I've learned in 5 years, and that's only something that I learned very recently. And especially to all of you who are participating in the community, to all of you I say, it's okay to be absent for a while. Your full attention will not always be on BJDs, and that's completely normal. Life gets in the way. You may have other hobbies, you may have obligations from work, or you may be participating in sports. All these things might drive you away from the dolls, but the dolls will always be there for you when you come back. I think it's a beautiful thing because you can come back to your dolls and you can see them again, and it'll be like the first day, you know, they will remain unchanged. And what's really changed is you, because you're a different person, you know, you've grown. And that's really the message that I want to carry across to you guys, is that you can't be 100% in the beginning, you can't accomplish everything straight away, but every year or every month, every day, every step of the way, you can get a little bit closer to where you want to be. So that is it. I hope you enjoyed this video, even though it got very rambly. I kind of was reflecting a lot, I reminisced. The next video will be talking about my collection in depth, but I'll wrap it up here. I've talked for way too long, and yeah, I hope you really enjoyed this video. Like, comment and subscribe if you like what I do, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a happy dolly day, guys. Bye!